Good morning to all. Myself, Gunjan Srivastava, Assistant Professor in SOIT Department, IMS Noida. This is the video in which we are just take a look on fundamentals of operating system. So when we start for fundamental of operating system, we should know the operating system first. The operating system, which we want to discuss in this video, is that interface, which is an interface between operating system, hardware and software. So we'll take a look fundamentals concepts of operating system. So objective of this video is learn fundamentals of different operating systems and Linux operating system. The outcome which we want to take from this video is the student will be able to describe the architecture of operating system and use Linux utilities to create and manage simple file operating system and simple file processing operations, organize directory structures with appropriate security and develop shell scripts. When we take term operating system, we should know that it is a resource manager. Resource manager, it means it gives all the resources to particular process. So when we talk about operating system, we should take a look on introduction. So operating system is a software. So when we talk about software, software is of two types. So first is business application software and second is system software. So software which works for the system is called system software, whereas when we talk about application software, the software which are useful for users are called application software. The softwares which are using for the system only or which provide services for the system only are called system software. So we can keep operating system in this category because operating system gives services to the computer system only. Operating system acts as an interface between user and computer hardware. So if we want to know the purpose of the operating system, so operating system provide an environment in which a user may execute programs. So when we talk about purpose of an operating system and when we talk about in terms of environment which is created by operating system for the user, so we can say it gives the resources for the process and as well as for the users. So user when user wants to execute a program, so he needs different resources of the system. So operating system is a resource provider, or we can say resource manager, which manages all the resources of the computer for the process as well as for the user. So when we talk about the tasks which are performed by the operating system performs all the basic tasks like file management, memory management, process management, and it also handles input and output devices and controlling peripheral devices such as disk drives and printers. When we talk about that we are installing a new hardware, it is very mandatory for the every device that it should have one device driver, because device driver always controls the device. So the operating system is having a basic task to manage the devices. So if we talk about file management, so file management is that we are having so many files and different types of files. So operating system is having a responsibility to manage all the files. When we talk about memory management, then we have to take a look that memory is of two types. The first is secondary memory and second is primary memory. So when we talk about primary memory, we should know that primary memory is having RAM and ROM in its category. So why RAM and ROM is there? RAM is having a large space, but is a temporary memory, or we can say it's a volatile memory. But when we talk about ROM is not a temporary memory, is a non-volatile memory, but it is having a very less space to store the data. So how to manage the data in RAM and ROM? It's a responsibility for the operating system. As well as when we talk about storage, secondary storage, so we are talking about hard disk. So hard disk is totally divided into same size of blocks, and every process provided by blocks to store its data. So when we talk about memory management, we should know that operating system has a responsibility to manage memory in terms of primary memory as well as in terms of secondary memory. So next responsibility which is take place by the operating system is process management. So when we talk about process management, we should know the process. So process is the active entity of a program, whereas program is a passive entity. So process is having its code and its data, and it is always in execution state. So there are so many processes parallelly simultaneously running in the operating system, in the computer system. And operating system has a responsibility that it manages all the all the processes. When processes are running simultaneously, sometimes it happens that inter-process communication happens. So when inter-process communication happens, then it is very necessary that all the processes which are communicating each other, they must be isolated at some level. So it is the responsibility of the operating system that it manages all the processes which are concurrently running and sharing the data also. So next is the responsibility is handling input and output. So when we talk about input and output devices, what happened that by input devices, we just take input from the user, and by the output devices, we just display the output to the user. So how to handle input and output devices, and how to manage all the data for the input devices as well as all the data for the output devices, it is a main responsibility of the operating system. The next is controlling peripheral devices. Yeah, we know that all the peripheral devices are having device controller to control itself. So all the device controllers must be controlled by operating system, such as disk drivers and printers. Some operating systems which are popular these days are Linux, Windows, Google's Android OS, OS X, VMS, OS 400, AIX, etc. So when we talk about computer system, we should know the computer structure. So when we talk about computer system computer system structure, we should know that we have to divide it, all the components, in the 4 main components. So first component is the hardware. So what is the hardware? Hardware just provides basic computing resources. So computing resources are CPU, memory, and input-output devices. So when we talk about CPU and memory and input-output devices, all these devices are, or we can say all these resources are necessary to execute or execution of a process. When we talk about the second component, which is more important, that is operating system. So operating system controls and coordinates use of hardware among various applications and users. The next, which is most important component, that is application programs. Application programs define the ways in which the system resources are used to solve the computing problems of the user. Users uses different types of application programs. So the common programs which used by users are word processor, compilers, web browsers, database systems, video games, etc. The last component, which is most important, that is users. User can be people, user can be machine, or user can be other computers. When we talk about computer system and its component, we should know the block diagram of that computer component of computer system. And this is the block diagram which is showing on the screen. So first is the user. User interacts with the computer system with the help of system software as well as with the help of the application program. User can use compiler program, assembler program, or text editor or database system to interact with the system. With the application program or with the system programs, the user gives the command to the hardware, but it cannot give directly commands to the hardware. So operating system is a responsibility to give their commands and create a system call for the computer hardware. Computer hardware always execute, or we can say always process system calls. It cannot directly execute commands which is given by users. So we can say this is the 4-layer architecture where lowest level is computer hardware, then operating system. After that, we are having system and application programs, and through application programs, user interacts with the computer system. When we talk about a computer, we should know how to start computer. So when we start our computer, a bootstrap program loaded into the memory. So typically it is stored into ROM and or EPROM, generally known as firmware. ROM is read-only memory, whereas EPROM is erasable, programmable, read-only memory. It initializes all aspects of system and loads operating system kernel and starts execution. When we talk about kernel, operating system kernel is the very teeny part of operating system which contains all the main parts and all the main functions of operating system. Now, next, we take a look on bootstrapping program. So bootstrapping program, when we take a look that for the block diagram. So first it is having master loader. So BIOS loads initial bootloader from master boot record on disk. Then second phase loader is the initial loader loads a more powerful loader, which possibly does not use BIOS anymore. And then final system. Bootstrapping is a process of starting a large and complicated system via a number of very small steps. A characteristic feature of bootstrapping is that the wonderful and powerful function of a large system cannot be used to start the system itself. They are very simple, not yet available because the simple system is not running. So when we talk about the booting process, we can see it's a flow chart or flow diagram of a booting process where the first step is to load basic file systems. After that, file system drivers. After that, we load and read configuration file. After that, load and run supporting modules. After that, if you are having more than one operating system in our system, in our computer system, that the bootstrap process will display operating system menu, and then we'll select which appropriate operating system we want to, if we want to select and on which we want to work. So we just select the appropriate operating system and then load the operating system by the booting process. The computer system optimization, when we have a term, then we should know that CPU, disk controller, USB controller, and graphics adapter. All these are the basic, you can say, devices which are connected with the memory and which comes under computer system operations. When we talk about parts of an operating system, we should know that operating system are having basic functionalities. The process management, as we have seen earlier, process management is how to manage the processes. Each process is having its own PCB. On PCB, it means process control blocks. Process control block itself is having information related to process. So process is an executing program. It has its code data and a certain set of resources allocated to it, and one or more threads of execution through the code. The operating system manages the allocation of resources to these processes and allow communicating with each other, and also provide system calls to manage these processes. Second is memory management. Memory must be shared between the OS and application programs. The OS must manage the allocation of memory to processes and control the memory management hardware that determines which memory locations a process may access. Next is file system management. Computers process information that must be transmitted, processed, and stored. File systems are an abstract, organized collection of file system objects. The OS provides primitives to manipulate these objects. Device management. Information is sent through a computer's input and output device. Processes access these devices using the system call interface. The operating system tries to manage said devices in a manner that makes them efficiently shared among all processes requiring them. System call is a programming interface to the services provided by the OS, typically written in C or C++. These all are, which are showing on the screen are references books. Silberstadt, Galvin and Gagne, Richard Blum, DM Dhamdere, and Sip Sankar. So this is my first video in which I told already about some fundamentals of operating system. So thank you from my side.